Have you ever noticed how certain individuals seem to hold an unspoken influence over their surroundings? Without uttering a word, without raising their voice or pleading for attention, they simply pull back, and suddenly, everything around them begins to shift. The atmosphere changes. People grow uncertain, curious, maybe even restless. What if you embraced that same approach? Imagine choosing stillness over reaction, silence over explanation. What might happen if you stopped engaging automatically with everything and everyone? That's the essence of the matter. The moment you begin to limit your emotional, physical, and psychological accessibility, you disrupt the expectations others have built around you. People often manage you through your reactions. Predictable, immediate, emotionally charged. But when you step out of that dynamic, when you quietly remove yourself from the game, you reveal a powerful truth. They never really understood you at all. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That idea invites deep reflection. When you become less available, who panics? Who pushes your buttons, desperate for a response? Their discomfort says far more about them than about you. It exposes the emotional hooks they've sunk into you, hooks you may not have even noticed. So often, you sacrifice pieces of yourself to preserve relationships, to keep peace, to avoid abandonment. But those very actions slowly drain your energy. With every automatic yes, with every emotionally charged reply, you erode a bit more of your own well-being. And what's left at the end of it all? Fatigue, emptiness, the quiet weight of a life lived too much for others. This isn't about cutting ties with the world, it's about choosing to stand with yourself. It's about walking the path Jung called individuation, the process of becoming fully and authentically you. You've been conditioned since childhood to respond, to comply, to be agreeable, to equate your worth with your availability. But here's a truth that often goes unspoken. Constant availability is not a sign of strength or compassion. It's a form of self-neglect. When you're always emotionally on call, you become predictable, and predictability is easily exploited. People begin to treat you as a resource, a comfort zone, a validation machine, a crisis responder. You become less of a person and more of a function. And here's the cruel paradox. The more available you are, the less you are valued. What is always at hand loses its meaning. You don't earn respect by being endlessly present. You earn fatigue. You lose yourself trying to keep everyone else comfortable. Jung also spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted and approved of. It's this very mask that makes you say you're fine when you're not, respond to messages when you're exhausted, justify your every move, and apologize for your boundaries. But the more you play the role others expect, the more you vanish from your own life. Over-availability is subtle self-erasure. It's driven by a need to be liked, to avoid conflict, to manage how others see you. But this false peace costs you everything. The people who demand you always be accessible don't want you. They want what you provide. And when you begin to change, to draw a line, to say no, those same people often turn cold, critical, or dismissive, not because you did something wrong, but because you're no longer useful to their agenda. This leads us to a crucial realization. The act of saying no, of pulling back, of becoming unavailable, threatens the dynamics others have relied on. It forces them to confront the absence of the comfort or attention you once gave so freely. The more they relied on your emotional labor, the more they'll resist your new boundaries. But that's not your burden. What you must ask is this: who truly deserves your presence, your time, your energy, and more importantly, who deserves your absence? Before answering that, it's necessary to dig even deeper and ask, why do we react so easily? Why do we so instinctively defend, explain, and appease? Jung described the mind as an energy system. Our thoughts, emotions, and actions all draw from the same limited well of psychic energy. Every time you react impulsively, especially to something trivial or manipulative, you drain yourself. When you argue over things that don't matter, explain yourself to people who don't care, or try to please those who take you for granted, you're bleeding energy into voids. And the truth is, the more you react, the more entangled you become. Resistance binds you. You may think you're acting out of strength, but unchecked reactivity is weakness masquerading as engagement. People who live perpetually drained aren't lacking power, they're misusing it. Chronic exhaustion leaves you wide open to manipulation. Those who thrive on others' emotional energy sense your vulnerability and exploit it. Jung emphasized that a healthy psyche knows how to contain and conserve its energy. This means saying no with calm, observing before responding, allowing silence to do the work of 1,000 explanations. True strength lies not in how quickly you react, but in how intentionally you choose to act. And this clarity only comes when you understand yourself deeply, when you know your own patterns and impulses. Think of the countless hours you've lost replaying conversations, trying to craft the perfect response, analyzing why someone mistreated you. That's energy poured into shadows that should have been left behind. The more you feed those loops, the more they persist. When your energy is well managed, you command presence. People feel your boundaries. But when you're always available, always reacting, you become energetically scattered. Fragile, easy to use, easy to forget. That's why you must identify your triggers. What makes you lose your center? These moments are not flaws to shame but doorways to mastery. Your goal isn't to be unfeeling, it's to be sovereign over your inner world. One of Jung's most profound insights is that when you protect your energy, you shatter the projections others place upon you. This can deeply unsettle those who relied on your compliance. Suddenly, they are left staring at themselves, and many cannot bear the reflection. Manipulators don't need to shout or coerce. They only need to press the emotional buttons you've left unguarded. And as long as you keep reacting the same way, they'll keep pressing. But when you stop playing your assigned role, when you withhold explanations, stop rushing to soothe, begin to retreat, the illusions fall apart. The mask they placed on you disintegrates. They can no longer predict or control you, and that terrifies them. Your silence becomes louder than words. Your absence speaks volumes. When you step away, people are forced to hear the noise within themselves. And that noise, guilt, insecurity, fear, is deafening. That's why they lash out. That's why they say you've changed. Not because you became someone worse, but because you stopped making them comfortable. Jung reminded us that true growth isn't about imagining light, it's about facing darkness. And sometimes, the most powerful confrontation comes through calm detachment. When you no longer dance to the tune others play, they must face the silence, and, in it, themselves. So the question remains, are you ready to be misunderstood, to face the discomfort of no longer being everything to everyone? Because in that discomfort lies the beginning of real power. In your withdrawal, in your silence, in your choice to be whole rather than useful, you become untouchable. Are you prepared to be misunderstood, rejected, or even resented simply for protecting your peace? Can you withstand the silence that inevitably follows a rupture? The stillness that others fear but in which a new kind of strength is born? That silence, often mistaken for weakness or avoidance, holds immense power. In this next reflection, we explore how silence can become one of the most potent tools of psychological resilience and inner transformation. We live in a world addicted to noise. Everyone is eager to respond, to argue, to prove a point, often at the expense of their own well-being. Amid this chaos, silence is often overlooked, misunderstood as passivity or emotional withdrawal. But there exists a different kind of silence, a sharp, deliberate, and powerful silence. This is not about avoidance. It's about clarity. It's about making a conscious choice to disengage from meaningless exchanges and emotional entanglements. True silence isn't the absence of voice, it's the presence of awareness. It's what happens when you stop reacting and begin to observe. And in that observation, patterns reveal themselves. Cycles of manipulation, emotional repetition, and quiet self-sabotage. This silence becomes a crucible for insight, a space in which lucidity emerges. And lucidity is threatening to those who seek to control you. Have you ever noticed how some people grow restless when you stop responding? When you don't explain, defend, or justify yourself, their discomfort isn't rooted in missing you. It's in losing the power to shape your narrative. As long as you engage, they can keep you tethered. But silence rewrites the rules. It unbalances those who depend on your emotional availability to maintain their own sense of control. Real silence is sovereignty. It is the refusal to be swept away by someone else's chaos. Carl Jung wrote that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires solitude. And solitude begins when you silence the world long enough to hear your own voice again. But silence comes at a cost. It distances you from those who only saw you through the lens of their expectations, not for who you really are. It makes you unreadable to those who depended on your emotional transparency. You'll be called cold, distant, perhaps even selfish. Yet this isn't a reflection of your flaws, but of their discomfort with your depth. The truth is, the more you grow, the more discerning you become with your words. Every sentence you speak is an energetic transaction, and not everyone is worthy of access to your truth. Sometimes silence isn't withdrawal, it's elevation. There's a reason silence is unsettling. It forces others to confront their own inner noise. Your absence speaks louder than any defense. And those who feel most threatened by it reveal how much they relied on your instability to maintain their own power. But the most transformative silence is not the one that disturbs others. It is the silence that rebuilds you from within. This is the silence that reconnects you to your essence, free from the need for validation. It's in this space that your energy is restored, your clarity returns, and your truth becomes louder than any spoken word. Of course, understanding all this conceptually is not enough. Change only begins when you embody it. It means no longer saying yes when your whole body says no. It means not replying to messages that drain you, refusing to partake in hollow conversations, and letting go of relationships that persist only through habit. Awareness without action is just self-deception. True change demands emotional discipline, the courage to choose conscious unavailability. This doesn't make you cold or cruel. It makes you whole. It's about protecting your energy, your peace, your time. It begins with small choices. Not responding immediately. Taking a breath before reacting. Leaving a conversation before it spirals. Saying, "Not today, I'm not interested," or simply no. And most importantly, doing so without apology. You owe no explanations for choosing yourself. Your silence is not a void, it's a boundary. And boundaries make people uncomfortable, especially those who benefited from your lack of them. Jung understood that individuation often involves isolation, but not a lonely, depressive one. Rather, a sacred solitude where you begin to rebuild your identity without the interference of the world. Want to measure your personal growth? Look at who begins to drift away when you become more reserved. Notice who tries to provoke you when you stop engaging. Pay attention to those who accuse you of changing the moment you start protecting your peace. These aren't signs you've done something wrong. They're signs you're breaking free. Yes, setting boundaries can feel like a betrayal of everything you were conditioned to be: agreeable, available, accommodating. And yes, you will feel guilt. But that guilt is a residue of a past self you're outgrowing. It's not truth, it's conditioning. To reclaim your energy is to reclaim your life. When you say no to the world, you say yes to yourself. When you exit toxic environments, you affirm that your peace matters more than false connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, you begin to be respected. Not by everyone, but by those who see you, not the role you played. Many won't be ready for this version of you. Your absence will unmask their dependency on your presence. And as they squirm in discomfort, trying to draw you back into their narrative, you'll see it for what it is: a desperate attempt to reclaim control over someone who no longer fits. And then comes the silence. That first phase is uneasy, filled with questions and doubts. But slowly, the silence begins to shift. It becomes cleansing, soothing, healing. What follows is solitude, not emptiness, but presence. A deep, anchored presence in yourself. The solitude of the strong. The peace of those who no longer betray themselves to make others comfortable. In that silence, clarity blooms. Anxiety fades. The need to be needed dissolves. And in its place grows a new kind of power. The power of being whole. Jung taught that true individuation demands a step away from the collective. It requires disidentifying from the roles you've played and walking alone for a while. But this solitude is not abandonment. It's a return. A return to your core. You stop being a passive participant in life and become the architect of your reality. And yes, people will fall away. Not because you failed them, but because you no longer fit into the version of you they preferred. And that is your liberation. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. You will walk away from spaces that once felt like home, only to rediscover your essence. You will be misunderstood, but finally respected. Because once you're no longer available to everyone, you become irreplaceable. And this, make no mistake, is a rebirth. A new beginning. A life where you no longer settle for crumbs, where you no longer entertain emptiness masked as love. You only welcome what honors your truth, your peace, and your presence. If you've read this far, a part of you is already on this path. A part of you knows that love means nothing if it requires you to abandon yourself. And that self-love truly begins when you choose yourself, even if it means walking alone for a while. So now, I ask you, are you willing to be misunderstood, judged, or even disliked in the name of your inner freedom? Are you prepared to pay the price of being fully yourself? If this message resonated with you, write in the comments, "I choose my peace." Let's see how many of us are ready to cross that threshold into emotional sovereignty.